My name's Anthony David Cicoria. I grew up in Kingston, New York. I was there for my first 18 years. In 1994, my wife had 5 people with birthdays in the month of August. So every year we would have a communal birthday party. And they had picked a place called Sleepy Hollow Lake. At the lake, there were pavilions that you could rent, and she rented one that would hold 25 plus people, and that was going to be our August get-together. I was given the job of running the barbecue, so I was outside getting the food ready, and most everybody else was upstairs in the pavilion. And at the beginning of the day, it was beautiful outside. The sun was shining, it was a pleasant temperature, and everything seemed good. At some point, I had decided I should call my mom to check on her because she was not going to be there. By this time, my dad had already passed, so my mom was there by herself. And I wanted to check on her, and so I got somebody to cover the barbecue, and I walked around the front of the building where there was a payphone attached. What I hadn't realized was that a storm cloud had blown up over the lake, and so we're right next to the lake. So I walk over and I'm gonna call my mom, and I put in the code in the phone, and I'm trying to get her on the payphone, and I let it ring 5, 6, 7 times, and she didn't pick up. So I thought, all right, she's busy. I'll try her again later. And as I started to take the phone away from my face to hang it up, I heard a huge crack. And this big flash of light came out of the phone and it hit me right in the face and just threw me back like a rag doll. And as it threw me back, I had the strangest sensation of moving forward. And I remember standing there going, this doesn't make any sense. I know I saw the lightning. I knew I'd been hit, and I knew I'd been thrown backwards. But now I'm standing here and nothing's making sense. And I look at the phone, and the phone's dangling. And I'm just standing there, just absolutely bewildered. And at that point, I hear my mother-in-law screaming, and she's at the top of the stairs. I'm at the bottom of the stairs. And she starts running down the stairs, headed right at me. And I thought, this can't be good when your mother-in-law's running at you, screaming, there's something's bad. As she got down in front of me, she was looking off to her left. And I thought, this is really strange. And it's like I wasn't even there. And I'm like, what the hell? And I turned to go where she's going, and I took about 3 steps, and I run into myself on the ground. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm dead. And it was such a shock. I fully expected that when you died, there would be some sort of something would happen to tell you, bells, whistles, who knows what. But there would be some sort of a signal that, hey, buddy, you're dead. But there wasn't. It was just a very natural progression of I was in this state this second, and the next second I was someplace else. I went from being in a physical form to being in a spiritual form. There was a lady who was waiting to use the phone. She gets down to start doing CPR. Turns out she's a nurse. And I'm standing there and I'm trying to call out to anybody who will listen. And I don't see, I can see all of them, I can hear all of them, but nobody can see or hear me. And then it occurred to me that I'm standing here and I'm thinking exactly the way I normally would. I have complete control of my mind, and I'm thinking in the vernacular in the way that I normally would think, and I'm having these massive racing thoughts are going through my head trying to make sense of this whole thing. But I realized at that moment that whoever I am, I always am. And there's no such thing as death. And, my spirit or whoever I was is eternal. And that was probably the first big thing, realization that came to me as this whole thing unfolded, was that my spirit is here forever. So we're essentially two people. We're in this body, which is nothing more than a costume, over the top of who we are always, and in our spirit form. And when I went up to the body and I looked at it, and it seemed to be very dispassionate about it. It was like, that's me, but it's not. I'm me. I'm still who I always was, and that's nothing but an empty shell. And that was pretty earth-shaking. It was not a frightening experience. It was just very matter-of-factly, this is the way things really are. And then I thought, well, there's no point in standing here because nobody can see me or hear me. And I turned around and I start to walk toward the stairs, and I'm going to go up the stairs and check on my family. And I started up the stairs, and I got to about the third step, and I'm looking down at the ground, and I start to see my legs dissolve. And I thought, well, okay, this is getting really weird. And as I got to the top of the stairs, I had lost all form. I was just a ball of energy. The stairs, when you get to the top of the first level, it goes up another few steps to the left. And I didn't bother with that. I had no form. I just went through the wall. And when I came out on the other side of the wall, I came out right over the top of my wife, who was sitting painting children's faces. And I remember taking a picture in my head of who was there, what kids were there, how the furniture was arranged, and what order the kids were standing in. And that became an important issue later on when we were comparing notes, and I was able to say all of these things that verified the fact that, yeah, I did see it, and I was there. I continued going through that room, and when I got out of the room and went through the roof, and that's when things really got interesting, it was like I had suddenly fallen into a river of pure positive energy. There was a bluish-white light that this energy emanated from. If you could imagine an energy that's completely composed of love and peace, there were no other emotions, no other senses that I had except that. And it was just earth-shaking to feel that much love and peace coming from this source. And it came to me that this must be the God energy. This is what makes everything. And I thought, this is the greatest thing that could ever happen to somebody, to have this realization and to have this feeling. And that's the only time I've ever experienced anything like that in my whole life. At that point, I realized that I was going someplace. And I started to see a collage of high points and low points in my life. It was just, there wasn't a lot of explanation or thought. It was just, there's pictures of different things in my life. High points, low points, trauma, whatever it was. And at that point, I was just kind of settling into flowing in the stream. I didn't know where it was going or where it was taking me, but it was exciting. And it was in ecstasy. It was such a wonderful feeling. And then all of a sudden, it's like somebody flipped a switch. Suddenly I was in pain. And I was back in my body, calling out loud in my head to whoever would listen that, please don't make me do this. I don't want to go back. And I had 3 kids and a wife, and I loved my life. But there was no comparison to what I was experiencing outside my body. I was like, please don't make me do this. I was really angry. I wanted to stay where I was, because I went from absolute bliss to absolute pain. I mean, where this thing hit me in the face and where it came out my foot with like 2 hot pokers. But I realized that, it's not my choice. And so the lady who was doing CPR had stopped, and she was kneeling next to me. And it took several minutes before I was conscious to be able to open my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, everything was really out of focus. And I wanted to say something to thank her. And unfortunately, what came out was, I'm a doctor. It's okay. And they called an ambulance and they called the police. And I thought, I don't want to go sit in the emergency room for 4 to 6 hours to have somebody tell me I'm alive. So I opted to just have them take me home, and I called my cardiologist friends and my neurologist friends, and I said, this happened, and they said, well, come right over, and went to their offices, and everybody said the same thing. It's like, well, you're lucky you're alive. After my near-death experience, I was afraid to say anything to anybody. This was, in the early 90s. And at that time, somebody could call the state and say, this guy's kind of loose around the edges. You might want to pull his license because he's saying things that don't make a lot of sense. I kept my mouth shut for the most part. I talked to friends and family about it, but I wasn't going to embarrass myself and have people call me a lunatic either. Before the lightning, I was on a road for academic orthopedics. I wanted to publish papers, and I was a chairman of a big spine meeting every year, and I was going down that road, and none of those things seemed to be important anymore. I was really kind of lost. I was beginning to wonder, why did I go through this? Because it wasn't making a whole lot of sense to me. Life exists after death. We're in this form for a certain period of time, and then we leave this form and we become something else. So it's just a continuum of existence. You keep going through this process. You reincarnate as something else or someone else. Your spirit continues, and you go through an evolution of learning and phases of healing and understanding of what you experienced in this present life and what you're going to work on in the next one. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to learn and to experience and to evolve spiritually into a higher being than what we are now. The way I look at it is everybody can go back to the source, but you have to earn your way back. And you do that by going through proving grounds, if you will. You experientially develop. There's 2 polarities. There's positive and negative. And moving along a positive polarity is service to others, as opposed to the negative, which is service to self. And if you can think along the line of service to others in your daily life, then that gives you a more of an advantage to grow spiritually and ultimately find your way home, rejoin with the source from whence everything came. This was the greatest thing that I've ever experienced in my life. I was given an opportunity to see what happens after death. Death is not to be feared. It's just a changing form. You still exist as whoever you are and always will be. Before the lightning experience, I was very grounded in science in terms of, what is reality? And now I completely understand that there's much more to our existence than we have any idea of. If everybody could experience that before they die, they would have a whole different perspective on life and what we're doing here. And it would change everything.